Hello, boys and girls and children of all ages. Fat Bastard Wannabe Buddha coming at you today. Today's discussion is going to be left-wing gun control, or left-wing gun nuts, which actually is sort of where I find myself at. It's one of those interesting things. Recently, I've been sort of trolling certain websites, especially the prepper movement, and also a lot of the gun sites. And the reason for this was basically collect some information and data about what is available and what certain ideas are floating out there in the blogosphere, because I was doing some character research for a friend of mine for one of his characters, and actually some of my own little ideas. And before my friends get all happy and excited, no, sadly Charles ain't writing again, even though I do have a couple concepts. But anyway, that's one of the reasons I did the prepper blog, and the reason I'm doing this gun control blog currently right here, or left-wing gun nuts. It's quite interesting that if you do troll on those sites, and whether it's the YouTube or just regular vlog sites, you will see that most of the conservative movement have taken over the gun movement. Most people who you would think likes guns and stuff are by and large right-wing zealots, or people of the old militia scene, or the old white supremacist movement, or the Christian identity white supremacist movement, which is sort of merged together a lot in the South. Sadly, that's a true statement. But it's very interesting that I know tons of left-wingers, and they're very well armed. They got lots of guns. And I can tell you from a personal experience myself, I grew up in a Christian pacifist home. My mother was a pacifist, and a committed pacifist. Yet, even though my family was a committed pacifist of the left-wing socialist, democratic socialist variety, we had a mini arsenal. We had basically a 308 Winchester. We had a 32 automatic. We had an old German Luger. We had 12 gauge and a basic 22 squirrel rifle. We had several guns, but we didn't make it publicly known and thump our chest about it. It was just basically guns that we used for hunting or survival, or just basically have around the house. And most of them, truthfully, was granddad's guns or great-granddad's guns, and they were passed down, and they were family heirlooms, or World War II souvenirs that we got, or World War I souvenirs that we had. And even though my family was a committed pacifist, we had lots of guns, and we viewed guns as tools, like a hammer. And we had no problems having hammers, and nor did we have any problems regulating hammers, and nor did we have any problems people, the government know that we had hammers or knives or anything else, which is quite interesting, because the current gun movement is actually a con, and it's sadly, I'm being honest with you, you're being conned. You're being conned by the large-scale manufacturers who want to sell you cheap pieces of junk at outrageous prices, but you don't really see that or understand that or want to see that. A large portion of a lot of the guns being made right now have horrific design flaws in them, and they don't get corrected until about 10 or 20 units down the line, until people inside the community said, "Hey, these little bullpup shotguns, they just take your fingers off when you eject the casings on it over and over and over again," and finally they do something about it. But anyway, that's beside the point. That's another ramble. Me personally, no, I don't have any guns, and the reason for that is, as you can see, I'm morbidly obese, and that's normally a sign of someone suffering from severe depression. I have a tendency to medicate myself with high fructose corn syrup, high starch and fats. That's what I do in order to maintain myself at a peak performance and keep my serotonin levels high enough that I can function in this society. So it's not a good idea for me to engage in a lot of things like drugs and gun use and other things. Do I believe that you have a right to own a gun? Yeah, I have no problem with owning any kind of gun or weapon you want. Just same with drugs. I have no problem with you owning or using any type of drug you want to. Doesn't bother me one bit. Doesn't bother me a bit either that the United States government regulates it. No. The guns I want, I perfectly recognize the fact that I'm going to have to register with the ATF. If I got rich tomorrow and I was able to buy and purchase the guns that I want, most of the guns that I desire are require a federal tax and stamp, and actually you got to register with the ATF they're on. Most of them are fully autos, and I have no problem with that. I have no problem with some form of gun regulations, with some form of gun registration, a limiting about the size capacity of magazines and stuff like that. That truthfully doesn't bother me that much. There's really no reasons to have 30, 40, 60 round mags. I know if you're doing a lot of target shooting, it's very aggravating to reload the mags over and over. But I'm sorry, that's one of the features you have to make in order to basically live in a large-scale society in which we do have a problem with violence in the society. And I have no problem with you having concealed carries. I just wish you were better trained and regulated on this concealed carries. Me personally, almost every one of my friends, except 2 of them, have a concealed carry. And they pretty much got it in one day in the state of Florida. And does it comfort me a lot to know that every one of them has a concealed carry? Truthfully, no. Not at all. One of my friends has a tendency every time he buys a new gun to post it on Facebook so everybody and their neighbors know he's got it, which is sort of some childhood bravado, which is I find very strange and disturbing on so many levels. My close little brother has a mini arsenal. No one knows that he has a mini arsenal, but he's just a good old boy hunter that likes to hunt and likes to go shooting periodically. And from when we talked about this, he has no problems on being registered. He has no problem being licensed. He has no problem being some basic regulations just on the safety on it for his own sake, and make sure that the product he's buying doesn't blow up in his hands. But we can't have a legitimate debate in this country because there's forces engaged in this debate, namely large-scale manufacturers, who just want to sell you crap, man. They just want to sell you crap, and they convince you that those people are going to come and take your guns away from you. There's over 300 million guns out there, plus, probably more than that. There's more guns than there are people in this country. No one's going to take them away from you. It'd be nice to make sure that everybody is somewhat licensed and somewhat knowledgeable about the weapons that they do have. I personally have no problem being registered for my guns. Doesn't bother me a bit. Doesn't have to bother me a bit that I would have to go to some kind of schooling in order to walk around with a concealed carry. And you also got to recognize that the United States is a very large, diverse culture society. It really is. You have people from everywhere on the planet and different value systems. And when you have that many people crammed together, it's not a good idea to have people walking around with a lot of firepower. It just isn't. And there should be gradations in laws in relation to a very rural area as opposed to more industrial, compact, high populous area. And we should make sure that the laws reflect the societies in which they are trying to govern. But we can't have an honest debate on gun control. We can't have an honest debate about guns because there's vested interest in there to make sure certain sides don't talk to one another. My side of the argument, which is on the far left of the side, rarely has a problem with the right-wing side of the argument because they haven't cleaned up their house. They have a lot of individuals in their house that are basic Nazis or white supremacists, and they don't deal with it, and that's one of the reasons we don't talk as much. And on my side of the things, we have a lot of people on our side that talk about the stuff that they have no concept about. They have no idea what a gun is or what's the difference between a semi-automatic and a fully automatic. I can see to that point. There's a lot of people on my side of the argument makes those arguments, but that's the nature of the beast. And it'd be nice if we could have a civil conversation about this. Yeah. That's my thoughts for the day. Thank you very much.